Good afternoon, welcome. We are quite honored and proud to have our great senator from our great state of North Carolina with us. This is Senator Thom Tillis, who is in his first term, second year?
Going in my, it feels like about 7 dog years, but just finished my first year.
Yeah. So I was visiting Senator Tillis up in his office in D.C. and looked around, and the walls were completely bare. And I thought, you know, what a neat thing it would be to have pictures from all the communities, all the municipalities, all the cities and towns. I'm decorating your office for you now. In the senator's office. So what I'd like to do with this picture, Senator, upon giving it to you, it is from Bob Richter, who's a local artist, has done many in a series, Fayetteville landmarks and pictures. I'd like to present this to you, but at the same time make a challenge to other cities and other towns to donate artwork or pictures for your office. So it gives a touch of home being in North Carolina.
Well, thank you, Mayor, and that's exactly what we want to do. I'm thrilled that Fayetteville's the first city because it's a very important city in North Carolina. I think most of y'all who know me know that veterans and military issues are job one for me, and I thought that it'd be great to start here. Maybe we get Jacksonville up here and then reach out to some of the other cities, but this will be proudly displayed in my office for as long as I'm in the U.S. Senate.
Great.
Which is at least 5 more years.
And hopefully much longer. Senator, I'll turn the floor over to you for a few minutes of a legislative update. I think you've given us probably about 10 minutes of your time, so thank you so much for being here.
I appreciate you all being here, and I'd be happy to answer any questions. To give you an idea, I think that we've made some progress over the last year. There have been a lot of things that, with everything going on in politics and the presidential election, some of the things that we do accomplish there you very seldom hear about, but the National Defense Authorization Act is something that was very, very important. It's something that my office spent a fair amount of time on so that we could take care of our men and women in uniform. We focused on making sure that the decision around the 440th is we got a great concept here. Why not ask the customer what they need to do their job to complete their training mission down at Fort Bragg. So that's a decision that now will rest in part with the command down here. And we worked on other initiatives in the area that are very important. We've done work to help out at Seymour Johnson to move forward with the next generation tanker out at Cherry Point to better position us for some of the Joint Strike Fighter work, because I view this whole area, I know y'all consider yourself a few hours away or a little bit of a drive away, but I consider this whole area an area that I want to make sure that all branches of the armed services know is ready to support the mission of the U.S. Armed Services. We've got a great community. You guys always bubble up as one of the top communities for supporting our men and women in uniform and supporting our vets. And, you know, in North Carolina, when I was Speaker, I really firmly believe that North Carolina is one of the most military-friendly states. And as our military expands and contracts, I think the best thing that we can do to make sure that North Carolina continues to be very prominent in the future is to build on that reputation. And thank you all for all that you've done to actually make my job easier, because when I go up there and I talk to men and women in uniform, you all have a reputation that's above any of just about any other. And I'm a little bit partial, I guess, being from North Carolina, but honestly, talking with people off the record, on the record, they're very happy. They feel very welcome. I was just talking with General Townsend. I asked him how his transition was going. He said, gosh, I feel like I've been here forever. They welcomed us with open arms, and we feel like we're already instantly a part of the community. The budget bill, a number of other things that we've done to try and provide a little bit more certainty. You all know, particularly as it relates to the military, going from year to year is a very difficult thing to do. We've tried to provide a little bit more certainty there. The transportation bill is going to benefit North Carolina in a very important way. I mean, it's first off, it's the first long-term transportation bill for many, many years. And again, you can't plan major road projects over 12-month cycles. So providing this longer horizon, not only are we able to provide more money and a consistent flow of revenue, but give you more time to plan it out and get more done. And I think when you marry that with what North Carolina's done for the strategic transportation formula, then that's naturally going to make North Carolina move, I think, more rapidly than a lot of other states. We're going back in session next week. This year, we're going to try and focus heavily on appropriations bills. We want to get these bills out so that we can provide even more certainty. I think you'll see a lot of the time in the Senate this year. For those of you who haven't followed Washington, the biggest surprise to me is how long it has been since we've gotten to what they call regular order, where we're really taking up appropriations bills, we're getting them to the floor, we're voting them out, sending them to the president's desk. That by itself will have a very positive impact on not only our federal spending, but state spending, so that people kind of know where they are. They can plan ahead, and it's just not something that's been done, and it's not a Democrat or Republican thing. It's been a bipartisan failure for the past decade almost, and I think we've finally gotten to an environment where we may be able to break that logjam, and I want to be a part of it. It's there's a lot of work to do this year. Probably the things that I'm going to focus most on is constituent service while I do my part as a new member of the U.S. Senate, and that's where every one of y'all can help. I've got Austin here who generally when I come to these meetings, my staff walk away with a big homework assignment, and that's exactly what I want. I want to make sure that every one of you know that constituent service, we have 5 offices in North Carolina. We have about 25 staff spread out across the state. We've got about another 25 up in D.C. We're the 9th largest state. We've got one of the probably the 8th or 9th largest staff of any U.S. senator. And I want you all to exploit them. If you ever hear about anyone needing help, veteran, someone in uniform, their family, or any citizen, for whatever reason, please let the first phone call be to the agency that should be able to fix the problem. Let the second phone call be to my office to make sure that that agency fixes the problem. So we'll give them a chance, but don't wait long to get these folks into our office. That's what we're here to do. And I think it's probably one of the most, it is not probably, it is the most important job that I believe that I have the responsibility for filling as a U.S. Senator. So Mayor, I appreciate, and Mayor Pro Tem, I appreciate you and the council spending your time with me today. I appreciate having this beautiful picture up in my office, and now I'll take a picture of that and send it to a few other mayor friends of mine and say, see what Fayetteville's given us. But we'll proudly display it there, and I'd like for y'all to come up, come and visit me in D.C. You're from this area, come up and visit me. We'll take a picture in front of this and be happy to welcome you. And make sure you encourage other people to come visit us. This is at a probably very, very simplistic level, but we love nothing more than hosting North Carolinians and giving them private tours through the Capitol. So if you're coming to Washington, or you know anybody who's planning on going to Washington, D.C., call my office. I guarantee you'll get a private tour. If I'm around, I'll spend some time with you. It's like speed dating. Sometimes it's only about 5 minutes, but I will guarantee you that we will make you feel welcome. We'll welcome you into the office. We'll welcome you into the Capitol because it's your Capitol. So thank you all for being here. And Mayor, I got a couple of minutes for a question if anybody happens to have any questions. Mayor Pro Tem.
I have one. Senator, thank you for that. Just a brief question for you. I know recently the federal system had released some folks back into some communities because of the way they've revamped the way that they were doing things. Are there any federal
criminal justice, you mean?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Are there any resources that cities can tap into to kind of help these folks transition so that they don't become a problem when you put large concentrations of those folks back into the communities in the different cities?
Mayor, I think that's a great question. I don't have a specific answer to a source of funding, but it's something I'm happy to talk with you about, because one bill that I'm working on that some people consider controversial, but I think is very important, is some of our judicial reform and sentencing reform bills. Here in North Carolina, when I was Speaker, we ended up doing the Justice Reinvestment Act. Everybody said there were a lot of critics at the time. But the fact of the matter is, in North Carolina, recidivism is down 14%, probation violations are down 50%. The number of probation officers have gone up in the hundreds, and North Carolina, over the course of about 5 or 6 years, is going to save almost $500 million in justice reform. So, some people will say that's soft on crime. Absolutely not. It's freeing up that money so that you can make it less likely that the people who are released are going to go back into the system, and it frees up money to let our men and women who are defending us every day, the police officers, to give them the training and the resources they need to do the job. But I'll make sure Austin gets your card, and we'll get a specific answer to the question if there's anything I can do to help. That's the other thing I should mention. We really also, you guys are on the ground in terms of what resources may be available or what needs there are. We can help connect the dots if there's any grants or resources that are available that you all qualify for. We are happy to help you all try and navigate the maze of Washington to get to those resources. So make sure you're, I don't care if it's transportation, planning, parks and recreation, whatever area of the city government that's really looking at these grants and resources that may be available. When you get to a point and you're filling out grant applications, call my office. We'll do everything we can to help you with that. Submit letters and do other things to help you be successful.
Yeah, Councilmember Munn.
About a year ago, I read that funding for the Hope 6 type projects may be going away. And about several years ago here in Fayetteville, we were able to leverage Hope 6 dollars with private investment to put $100 million worth of renovated new housing and things like that. Do you have any update on the Hope 6 type funding at the moment?
I don't, and I'd be honest with the omnibus. That should be, to the extent that it relied on any funding with the omnibus that came through. We can give you a crisp answer on that. But
there's so many programs.
Well, that and a part of what I think we need to do ultimately with spending reform is go back and look at all the way we're spending the money and determine if there's a more efficient or effective way to get to the purpose that you're trying to solve. Mm-hmm. So I'd be, over time, less concerned with whether or not a given fund is available versus whether or not the need is being funded. Because I think over time, you just see a lot of these different well-intentioned programs. I see it with veterans, for example. I'm thrilled that we're going to be able to open up the new HCC here in Fayetteville and be at the ribbon cutting today. But in Veterans Affairs, do you know how many 1-800 numbers there are to contact the Veterans Affairs? Take a guess.
Hundreds.
900.
Wow.
And so the folks that are working on that said, we're going to fix it. We're going to fix it soon. I said, yeah, don't let that be one number that has 900 choices underneath it. But what that speaks to is the inherent complexity of this organization. Probably a lot of well-intended, sometimes probably politically driven. Somebody was concerned with an issue that happened in some state, changes the program as a whole, or creates a one-off and a one-off here, a one-off there. We're seeing that structural problem everywhere I go. Whether it's in veterans, whether it's in providing funding to local communities. I, for one, think it makes a lot more sense to cut as much of the bureaucracy out of Washington as possible so that you free up even more money for local programs where we measure results. We hold you accountable and measure results. What we do up in Washington a lot is hold you accountable, measure results, but then it dictate exactly how you go about producing the results versus providing more local flexibility for doing that. And that's a part of a reform effort that's going to take years to fix, but we've got to start really asking these questions about how the money's being spent. But on your specific question, we'll make sure, actually Robert Wilkie works on with my DC staff. We'll come back and give you a specific answer to that.
I appreciate that, sir.
Councilmember Art.
Sir Tillis, thank you for your opening comments about the appropriations process. And as we move back towards normalcy, where agencies like the Army and the other military agencies can plan, I'm looking at the situation that we have with the ongoing conflict overseas. And one of the issues that you always have is you have your day-to-day funding of how you operate your organization, then you have your contingency funding for operating in a wartime environment. Is there any intent to look at, identifying, approving, authorizing, if you will, and then appropriating for our effort against ISIS and those other actions that we're taking towards terrorist activities overseas?
Yeah, it's very difficult it's such a fluid situation. I'll try not to get overly technical in my answer, but you have to have, we've got the OCO funding, the Overseas Contingency Operations funding. We actually kind of use that to get around some of the other funding limits we have with sequestration and a number of other things. Bad. It's a hairball of an appropriations process, but at least it's relieving some of the pressure. But we do need to back up. And I think a part of what we have to do is back all the way up to the point in time that we decide what we're going to buy. What you're talking about is at the end. So we bought all this stuff. Now, how are we going to use it? How are we going to deploy it? How are we going to arm it? But an organization, y'all, was it the Army or was it Department of Defense that created the RFP for the new handgun?
DOD.
DOD. Okay. For the new handgun, for the preferred handgun for the Department of Defense. Now, most of y'all know, y'all got a handgun out there or something? You know how many pages that RFP is for the new preferred handgun for the Department of Defense? It's 1,000 pages. So basically, if you took the technical specifications manual for every handgun that's probably even in the running and you staple them all together, it wouldn't be 1,000 pages, every single one of them. So a part of what we have to do is, I think what we need is more of a uniform-driven, men and women in uniform, that is, driven approach to prioritizing how we spend the money when we're taking the fight to the enemy, like ISIS. But a part of what we also need to do is back up and say that over time, we have created billions and billions and billions of dollars in waste in all the planning processes that lead up to that and actually provide the resources that they need to deploy. So to me, right now, that's almost a solve world hunger thing. I'd be happy to cook a meal on a consistent basis. So if we could get to a point to where we're appropriating consistently on an annual basis with some level of reliable 2-year, 3-year, 5-year out planning, a lot of that efficiency will just naturally come out to the point that you're talking about spending the money to take the fight to the enemy. Then we got to work on all these things that are costing us billions and billions of dollars. Everybody hates sequestration. I know Fayetteville hates sequestration, right? But I've asked the men and women in uniform the same question. I sit on the Senate Armed Services Committee, and I ask them the same question. Are the cuts that are dictated by sequestration the problem, or is it the manner in which we tell you to cut? And without variation, it's the manner. In other words, they know that money can be saved, but the way the federal government's telling them to cut it makes no sense at all. When you have to uniformly cut highly productive, highly important programs at the same level of highly unproductive, unimportant programs, it makes no sense. That's why we have to get rid of sequestration and then put the pressure back on the armed services to find ways to save money, to get 1,000-page RFPs for the new next generation handgun down to a 50-page RFP, and then free up all those resources so that you can do a better job and provide more resources to the people that are taking the fight to the enemy.
Absolutely. My second question was on the VA and all the efforts with that. We're beginning to see some progress with reductions on VA wait times. Is there anything that you can share with us today about new initiatives to help the VA? I mean, you just mentioned hundreds of phone lines. Are there other initiatives that you're working on?
Yeah, actually, Senator Isaacson, who's the chair of the Veterans Committee, is in town. He'll be at the ribbon cutting this afternoon, and he's been very supportive of a request that I made, gosh, it was about 6 months ago, to dig deeper into transformation. And when I had a private sector job, we won't call it a real job anymore, but when I had a private sector job, I worked with large organizations, working on people, process, technology. How do you go into an organization that's performing at 70% of what its capabilities are and get it in the 90th percentile? I absolutely believe Secretary McDonnell has that mindset. He came from the private sector. He's worked in large, complex organizations. He's brought in a team of people who get it. The question is, so you've got, I think, leadership right now that get the need for transformation. The people on the ground are very seldom the problem. You know, say 1 or 2 staff that have a bad day, or maybe it's time for them to move to another organization. We've got incredibly talented people in our hospitals and in our healthcare centers. There's a lot of people in the middle that are causing the problem. We have, you would think, our hospital system would have an integrated scheduling system. It's got a 30-year-old system, and there are several variants across every other subdivision of the VA across the nation. I've already used the phone line example. The scheduling problem is one that comes from inconsistent processes, not only within what they call the VISNs, the subgroups of the VA, but even within the VISNs, they have variations. We did a bill that we got passed, Senator Brown and I sponsored it, that had to do with providing survivor benefits. This was it was a glitch. So there was a bill that was passed that allowed survivor benefits to go to veterans who pass away, to their family members. But there was a glitch in the original bill that did not allow that same thing to happen for someone who was family members for a man or woman who was killed in combat. They were not qualified, that family was not qualified for the same transfer of benefits. So everybody says, okay, no brainer, we need to fix it. Over 10 years, that benefit's estimated to cost about $6.2 million. Not a lot of money in the scheme of things. The cost to change the system so that you can track and provide that benefit for the next year is going to cost $5.1 million. So it's going to cost almost as much to change the systems to convey the benefit. Those are the sort of things, so that I'm down in the weeds now with Secretary McDonnell and his staff. I'm working at Senator Tester, Democrat senator from Montana, is my colleague on this, and they've tasked us with spending time with this transformation team to say, great, we got the high level strategy. Now let's boil that down into measurable, executable milestones with benefits attached to them, and run this like a transformation project, and hopefully get it going this year so that it will continue into the next administration. What I've told Secretary McDonnell, who was appointed by President Obama, is I don't want to start having this discussion again in 15 months based on the outcome of the presidential election. I want to work with you now to create a program that, regardless of who gets in the White House and who fills his role, if he is appointed by the next president, to make sure that we can, for veterans, can't we all agree that we can transcend politics, get something in place and start measuring it? Maybe nip around the edges, but fundamentally have a program that over 3 to 5 years completely transforms the VA, not VA in general, and then VA health into the greatest healthcare system in the world. We can do that. We got the people on the ground to do it. Now what we need is an administration and bureaucracy that lets them do what they want to do. Half of them are veterans. They want to provide the best care they can possibly provide to veterans. We've got to give them the tools, and most of the time just get out of their way.
Thank you, sir.
Well, again, thank you all for being here. Thank you for the beautiful picture. It will beat me to DC, actually. It'll be there over the next couple of days. I don't get there until next week, but I'm out here in the area for a while, and please take me up on contacting my office for any kind of constituent request you can think of. And to the extent the city needs any resources, the mayor's already got a well-worn path to my office in DC, and I look forward to seeing some of the council members join him up there to visit with me, and come visit us. Thank you.